U.S. President Donald Trump has warned that a new AI chatbot from Chinese startup DeepSeek is a wake-up call for America's tech industry. The app has become the most downloaded free app in the U.S. already. Its popularity has shaken the markets, with U.S. chip giant Nvidia seeing close to $600 billion wiped off its market value.
It's the breakthrough AI chatbot that's taken the tech industry by surprise. DeepSeek is a Chinese startup that says its artificial intelligence model rivals the competition at a fraction of the cost. Founded in 2023, DeepSeek says the app cost around $6 million to develop. That claim has sent off alarm bells for U.S. tech giants who spend billions on AI technology. DeepSeek spooked investors on Wall Street and sent stocks tumbling. Nvidia, the company that makes chips to power AI, lost nearly $600 billion in value, the biggest one-day loss for a company in U.S. history. DeepSeek's rise comes on the heels of Donald Trump's announcement of a $500 billion project to build AI infrastructure. Trump issued this warning about the low-cost rival.
The release of DeepSeek AI from a Chinese company should be a wake-up call for our industries that we need to be laser-focused on competing to win, because we have the greatest scientists in the world. Even Chinese leadership told me that.
DeepSeek is now #1 in Apple's App Store. It overtook ChatGPT, whose founder Sam Altman called DeepSeek an impressive model. The future of U.S. artificial intelligence is now in question, and the AI race could be anyone's game.
Daniel Winter from DW Business joins me now. Daniel, this kind of took everyone by surprise. How significant is DeepSeek's new chatbot, especially compared to other platforms like ChatGPT?
Okay, take everything that you know about AI and throw it out the window. They're rewriting the history books now as we speak, because this model has changed everything, really. I mean, first of all, it proves that you can train a cutting-edge AI for the fraction of a cost of what the latest American models have been doing. That is already hugely significant. And secondly, it's also a demonstration of AIs learning from other AIs, because that's how they're able to train DeepSeek up, is to learn from the other AIs that are out there. And it's so significant that one respected tech analyst, who's not known for his hysteria, Ben Thompson, says it definitely seems like we are close to AGI. Now, that's an AI model that can think and reason like a human being, because once you get AIs learning from AIs, they can improve on themselves and each other, and basically you've got what they call liftoff in the AI industry. And it's not that this is happening in this model, but it's the early signs that we're heading towards this era which AI scientists have been predicting for a while.
Now, what is DeepSeek's secret? You talked about the costs. How were they able to get there without spending billions of dollars?
Well, first of all, they cannot get their hands on the latest chips that are made in America by the likes of Nvidia, right? Because there's a ban in place. So they've managed to be able to use chips which are just a little bit older, a little less powerful, still very powerful, but not as powerful as the latest ones, in order to make a model which rivals those that are in the United States right now. And that is the kind of the wow moment that's come out of this. How have they managed to get so far by using less computing power? So that is kind of the revolution that's going on here. That's what's behind why people are so shocked at the moment.
Shock, especially in the tech industry, because competitors now have some homework to do.
Absolutely.
What does this mean for the competition in the US and in the EU as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, think about poor Nvidia, right? I mean, not so poor Nvidia, but anyway, they rocketed up because of their AI chips that were doing fantastically. And then suddenly, they're in the position where their most optimistic projections are now not going to come true, because turns out that you don't necessarily need a lot of the most expensive chips that they can make right at the cutting edge, and that you can actually do it a bit cheaper. And that's why people are revising down their estimates for Nvidia at the moment. When it comes to tech companies in the US and Europe, First of all, they're going to have to change their entire position on this. Do they make their own sources, their own models open source now? Perhaps that could be a way to, in order to have that scientific exchange speed up in the United States. As for Europe, Europe's been way behind for ages now. But if China can do it on less cost with less of the tech backing it, the physical infrastructure, is this a chance for Europe to now develop its model or to be able to develop its own apps and software that build on its own AI that is made at a fraction of the cost? There is potential there. That could be a light at the end of the tunnel for Europe's AI dreams, which have so far been very far behind.
Yeah. With technologies like this coming from China, potential users like myself have questions about how's my data going to be handled, what's the bias this chatbot might have. What do we know about that at this point in time?
Okay, so we have to separate out the app from the model. So the DeepSeek app, if you download the app or if you go to their website, you will absolutely 100% get censored information. So you cannot ask about Tiananmen Square or massacres or any kind of negative aspect of Xi Jinping or anything to do with Chinese history in that regard. But the model itself, you can download that. I've downloaded it myself, a distilled version of the model, so it's smaller, can fit onto a computer, and then you can ask it anything, and it's completely uncensored. So you could imagine, because this is open source, that companies all over the world might say, well, I'll take that and I'll use it and I'll build on it and I'll be able to make something which is not censored. But then, of course, if the average user, consumers who are not going to go through that whole process, are attracted by the likes of the DeepSeek app and website, then they are going to get a very filtered version of the information that they might actually be looking for. And that is something that people need to be aware of.
DW Businesses. Daniel Winter, thank you so much. For more, I can talk to Stephanie Hare now. She's a tech researcher and AI expert. Stephanie, welcome to DW. Now, is the craze about DeepSeek's new chatbot justified?
Yeah, I think it is justified. It's a very useful prompt for American tech companies and indeed tech investors to take a long, cold look in the mirror to see if they are putting their money correctly into the right investments. So why am I saying that? Until really about a week ago, most people would have said that AI was a field that was dominated by the United States as a country and by very big American technology companies as a sector. We can now safely say that both of those assumptions are being challenged. Why? China has been number 2 in the world on artificial intelligence for a while, and I think still would be considered to be in that place. But the revelation of this new company and app, both called DeepSeek, the app is named the same as its company, coming from China, is really ranked, frankly, as good as some of the big American companies' apps are. So if you're using OpenAI's ChatGPT, it's going to be very similar to that. Now, it has some bugs, by the way, and some things that are still being worked out, but that's the same with all of the American apps too. So we just want to manage expectations. Nothing's perfect yet. But already the quality is very, very good. What has shocked the United States and the American tech sector is that they were able to build this app for a fraction of what American companies build it.
How so? What's their secret?
Well, a number of things are their secret. So first of all, they are using fewer chips than American companies because they've had to, because of the export controls put in by the US government to try and slow Chinese AI innovation down. It's actually almost had the opposite effect. That design constraint meant that they had to innovate and find a way to make their models work more efficiently. You have, necessity is the mother of invention. They have fewer chips. They have to find a way to make it work better. So that's point 1. Point 2 is that they've also built their technology using open source technology, whereas most of the US companies, with the exception of Mark Zuckerberg's Meta, have been using closed source technology. Now, what does that mean for people who aren't particularly technical? It just means that the Chinese DeepSeek app can be used by other people. They have opened up their code. Developers can take a look in, experiment with it, and build on top of it. And that is really what you want in the long-term race for AI. You want your tools and your standards to become the global standards. The real race between China and the United States with regards to artificial intelligence is about who is going to dominate in building out the entire infrastructure for AI.
Yeah, and it sounds like that race has been upended by how you're describing it. What impact is this going to have on the AI industry as a whole?
I think it's a healthy thing. I think the United States was possibly a little bit complacent with the lock-in of the Magnificent Seven, the so-called seven top companies working on AI, who had unconstrained access to the chips that are powering this revolution and obscene amounts of money, as we saw from the US revelation of President Donald Trump last week for the Stargate $500 billion investment infrastructure program for AI. So for them, they didn't have to focus on being efficient in their models because they were just going constantly to be bigger. So I think it's good long term.
All right. That was tech researcher Stephanie Hare. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lisa Soder is a senior policy researcher at Interface. That's an independent expert organization specializing in IT and public policy, and her work focuses on all aspects of AI governance. Lisa, thanks so much for your time. Can I ask you, is the hype surrounding DeepSeek's new chatbot, is it justified?
Thanks so much for having me, first of all. Well, I think there's probably a bit more complicated picture whether or not it is justified or not. I think one thing that is really true, it is a very impressive model. It can really do a lot of impressive things and is on par, basically, with some of the best models that we're seeing in Western countries. But basically, just to give a little bit of a background, what the model does is it just doesn't kind of shoot back an answer, but kind of thinks through a problem step by step. And just like a human, we come up with a lot of better results by this approach. But I think what was really, really impressive, and it's also the thing that kind of made investors sit up and panic, is the cost of development. And so there were some really impressive jumps and developments that we're seeing.
That's right. I mean, other companies are spooked, aren't they, by how DeepSeek has managed to develop this for a fraction of the money that others have had to invest. So, I mean, can you tell us their secret?
Yeah, just to give like a little bit of background. So it is estimated that the rare training was around $6 million US, which is compared to the $100 million that the companies right now are putting into these models, really just a tiny fraction. What we have to say is that a lot of the things that this DeepSeek model is building on is actually on things that the US has first developed. So a lot of the things were just kind of copying what has been made before. But then there's also a lot of things where they were able to distill the model and create more efficient approaches in the training, but also in the inference stage that makes it so much cheaper. And I think like one really impressive thing is that it's challenging a lot of assumptions that have been made in Silicon Valley about what it actually needs to create really impressive models.
So the question is, how is this going to impact the AI industry as a whole?
I think it's really unclear and difficult to tell the future of such an industry that's changing so fast and rapidly. But what we see for now, at least, is that the barrier of entry is much lower than it was expected in the past. So even though 6 million is still a really impressive sum, it would allow more players to basically enter the market. And
can
a
I
really
ask
interesting
you,
thing.
Can I just ask you, because I am aware of our time is limited, what are DeepSeek's political limits, given that it comes from China? So, for example, would it answer questions about Tiananmen Square or about Tibet, for example?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I think also very interestingly, and I think something that we don't talk a lot about, is also China has a lot of regulation and laws around how models have to be developed and deployed. And one law they passed, or measures they passed, is on how generative AI should be developed and what kind of output they can give out. And so in a lot of ways, it's actually much more stricter than the AI Act. So questions that might pose a threat to national security or the social order in China, they can't really answer these things. So, as you pointed out, if you ask politically sensitive questions, you probably won't get the same answer you would get from a ChatGPT model.
Lisa Soder, AI governance researcher. Lisa, thank you so much for those really interesting insights. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And for more on this, we can speak to Min Jiang, a professor of communication studies at the University of North Carolina in the US. Welcome. Thanks so much for your time. We're going to look at the US reaction in just a moment. Can I ask you first what the release of a robust Chinese AI model tells us about how advanced the Chinese tech sector is?
Well, apparently advanced enough that it's causing the world to reassess their previous basic assumptions about AI. For example, is ChatGPT Pro worth $200 a month on a very practical level? Now there's a free open source version. And how overvalued is OpenAI, or for that matter, any other US AI companies? Is the $500 billion Stargate project announced by Donald Trump last week, for example, the correct strategy? So it raises definitely a lot of questions. Based on the technological reports assessing DeepSeek and another Chinese open source AI, Kimi, their abilities to compute looks like they seem to be performing on par or slightly ahead in some areas compared to OpenAI's model that powers ChatGPT, as well as Google's Gemini and Meta's Llama, for example. What fascinates the technological community seems to be DeepSeek's sophisticated reasoning chains that demonstrate how AI arrives at its conclusion on a given question. So these models also appear to be more efficiently running, requiring much computing power. There's a lot of dispute we have just heard over DeepSeek's alleged development price tag of $6 million and the possibility that it may have access to the most advanced Nvidia chips under embargo. These facts, I'm sure, will be litigated in the days and months to come. But based on the models themselves, the Chinese open source model seems to be reflecting legitimate efficiency, innovation, and really different approaches to solving some of the difficult problems in AI development. Mm-hmm. Even, OpenAI's Sam Altman and Nvidia and President Trump himself have acknowledged that the US AI firms now have good competition.
Mm-hmm. How important is technology like this for Beijing's technology strategy? So there's the idea of China not having to rely on Western technology.
AI is definitely an important piece of Beijing's overall technology development strategy. In many of the advanced technology areas, China is quickly catching up and even pulling ahead in some areas. For instance, in 5G area, China has Huawei. In leading social media apps, China has TikTok, which is now getting banned. And Red for example, recently becoming really, really popular. In EVs, China has BYD and NIO. China is also developing a very impressive nuclear fusion program. So in AI, we now know that China has DeepSeek and Kimi. I think it's important to remember that China has long believed in technological self-efficiency and independence. This belief has deep roots from the Cold War era, during which China developed its nuclear capabilities. In the opening and reform era, since the late 1970s, China has this strategy and mantra called for modernization, referring to modernization in agriculture, industry, defense, and science and technology. Mm-hmm. So the country has been practicing technological self-sufficiency for quite some time, for decades, mm-hmm. and we shouldn't be too surprised. What is surprising, as your video already alluded to, is China's effort in open source. The fact that both DeepSeek and Kimi are open source AI models. Mm-hmm. So this strategy is definitely challenging the more proprietary model that we have seen from the United States. So the US is building up its walls around itself. China seems to be tearing them down. So this is actually something quite interesting that we can, the world really is yet to see how it develops and unfold over time.
I'm aware of our time limit, so just very quickly, looking at the US, Trump sees DeepSeek as a wake-up call for US industry. Do you see any danger of protectionist reactions? Just in 30 seconds, if you could.
Well, one thing is clear is that US sanctions may have backfired, accelerating China's innovation instead. Sure, in the short term, sanctions may cause difficulties, but I think in the long term, sanctions, as we have seen, don't quite work that well. President Trump really has a pledge to win and compete. Personally, I don't think a zero-sum I win, you lose Cold War mentality is really productive. Competition in the AI area is a global phenomenon. And we have seen throughout history that breakthroughs often come from very unexpected places. So rather than framing this as an us versus them kind of game, I think the world has much to benefit from learning from others and solving some of the difficult problems that we face collectively.
Min Jiang, we've run out of time, I'm afraid. Thank you so much for your time today, a Professor of Communication Studies at the University of North Carolina.
Thank you.